Hi, my name is Ali Duran with IBM Worldwide Performance Management Team. Today I'm going to be covering how to install Planning Analytics, Planning Analytics Workspace, and Planning Analytics for Excel to Windows 2016 Server. For this, we're going to be using a few websites, and all of them are accessible through Google searches. The first one we will be looking for is the Planning Analytics Fix Central. This is going to help us find the latest and greatest versions of the software we will be installing. You can also use your Passport Advantage site if you have an IBM account to download these content. And Planning Analytics Fix Central also requires you to have an IBM ID in order to be able to download these software. The second one we will be using is going to be another IBM site for workspace installation. You can also Google that, Planning Analytics Workspace Installation, and it'll take you as the first link that you will be finding. Okay, let's go ahead and start. So first thing I want to do is make sure that I have the latest and greatest software, so I'm going to be going in here, selecting the link that popped up, the first link, which is taking me to Business Analytics, Planning Analytics Workspace, Local 2.0.17. Now, 2.017 is not the latest and greatest, but what I'm going to do is show you a quick trick that you can do. So when you come to Fix Central, it will take you to the first selected download. From there, what you can do is there's a trail in here for the links, so you can select Identify Fixes at the top. From there, instead of selecting the individual fix, select the Browse for Fixes and say Continue. What this is going to do is it's going to show you every component of Planning Analytics in one environment by their latest and greatest release dates. You can see that these are the last software that were released. The top one is IBM Planning Analytics for Microsoft Excel, which is something we're going to need, so I'm going to check that. The second one is IBM Planning Analytics Workspace 2.028, which is also another component that I'm going to need. Now, I already checked Planning Analytics for Microsoft Excel 29. As you can see, due to IBM's continuous development cycle, we have multiple releases of the software delivered on short periods of time. As you can see, this one is November 23rd, this one is December 19th. Two releases of the product. I don't need both releases of Excel, so I'm going to switch to the next one. The next one we have here is IBM Planning Analytics Workspace 2.0.27. Again, I have the 28 selected, so I don't need that one as either, so I'm going to switch. The next one, again, Excel is here with the 26th release, but here's something that I'm going to need, which is IBM Planning Analytics Local 2.0.3. Now, if you're a legacy TM1 user, you know this as your TM1 server, TM1 installation. So we're going to need that one as well. Okay, so we'll select that. Now, as you hit continue, it's going to ask you to enter your IBM ID so that you can start to continue the download cycle. Now, this is going to be a big download. I'm not going to show you the whole download duration, which is going to be about close to 25 minutes to an hour, depending on your internet connection. But what it's going to do is it's going to create a few files. So I'm going to skip that part for now and go to the previously downloaded files. Now, when you select those three components and when you download them, in my case, I'm downloading to a Windows 2016 server, as I mentioned. This Windows 2016 server, let's take a look at it. I'm going to go into the properties to show you what it looks like. It's a 64 gig server, it's a 64-bit, and Windows 2016 server, as you can see here, is installed on this. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is the installation that we're going to be talking about today can be done only on a Windows 2016 server. So if you have a Windows 2012 server, for instance, the installation that I'm talking about today will not work for you. Okay. All right, I'm going to close this one and then go to my download location. There's the PA downloads. Now, remember, we selected three components in there. but there's a bunch more files in here. And what are these? As you know, in Fix Central, we have many different versions of our software that you can download. But once you select these Fix Central downloads, what it does, it basically gives you all the components of the fixes that we have released, which means that every operating system out there that we have released the product for is going to be given to you. What that means here, as you can see, there's the Windows 32-bit version of our Excel add-in versus our 64-bit version of our Excel add-in. Then we have our Workspace Local here as one download, and then the Workspace Local for Windows as another download, which is what we're going to need. Then we have the Linux version of TM1, Windows 32-bit version of TM1, 64-bit. There's the client versions for both 32 and 64 bits, and then the Linux TM1 Server CD component as well in here that you can find. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically select the ones that I need out of these and create a new folder. I'm going to call it PA installation, and I'm going to start moving the components I need. Now I have a 64-bit operating system, so I'm going to use the 64-bit versions of our product, as well as the Microsoft Office that I have is 64-bit. That's why I'm going to be using the 64-bit versions of the product. The Excel add-in is selected for 64-bit, and then now I have the Windows version, Windows 2016 version of Workspace that I need. I'm going to move it over here. And then I have the Windows 64-bit version of TM1 Server. I'm going to also move that over here. Now the rest of the components I don't need. You can, if you want, keep them here, or you can get rid of them. To gain some space, I'm going to just delete these components from here. So I'm going to just drag them to my recycle bin. Okay. So all I need are these three files that I'm going to be extracting and starting the installations for. The first installation I'm going to do is going to be TM1, so I'm going to unzip the TM1 folder. One more file, the tar file is now created. Let's extract that as well. Okay. So now I have two directories in here. Installation files are going to be under Win64H. Depending on your rights, you might want to install it as administrator, or if you're already the administrator, you can just say open. Installation for the server is relatively straightforward. There's nothing major changes, no major changes in here. Depending on your server type, this is only one change that you might want to do, either production or non-production server. You might want to pick that to avoid any licensing issues. And for me, I'm using the D drive for my installations because I have more space in there, so I'm going to select the D drive in there. So we'll continue to do yes here because it wants to create a new folder. Now, from here you can select any other components that you would like to install, such as the Performance Modeler or the Cognos Insight. Just so I can show you, I'm going to select the Performance Modeler, so it's going to select put a check mark right next to it. So we'll hit next, we'll say next, next, and it's going to install 297 total components. Now I'm not going to make you wait for the installation of these. It's going to take you about 5 minutes to finish the installation. Okay, our installation is now complete. We can see the finish notification here, and what I need to do is start the IBM Cognos configuration so I can start setting up my TM1 server. So we'll select this checkbox and start IBM Cognos configuration. What it's going to do is it's going to open the Cognos configuration manager, and then from Cognos configuration we're going to start setting up our services. Now at this point, all I need to do with Cognos configuration is do a right click and say start, and it's going to ask me if I want to save my configuration changes. We'll say yes, and Cognos Configuration is going to start building my services. Okay, looks like all my TM1 servers have been registered and all the services have started. On the left hand side you can see that there's a green arrow right next to my TM1 services, which states that they're all running, and then there's also check marks for each of the TM1 services here. That means that all my services have been registered. Just to double check, what you can do is you can go to your Windows menu and then make sure your services are up and running. They're going to be listed under IBM as their names. So if you look at here, IBM Cognos TM1, here are the new TM1 servers that we have created and are ready to be used. Now we can close this and start working with our TM1 servers. Now we can switch to TM1 Architect and take a look at a few of the property settings in our TM1 servers. Within Architect, what you can do is you can turn on the properties window, and once you turn on the properties window, this is going to give you some idea about where your servers are running as well. So I'm logging in with admin Apple. Now you can see that the network address is here, 169.45.106.55, which is my public IP address that I'm using on this server. Now the reason I'm showing you this is there will be some changes as you do start installing Planning Analytics Workspace and Docker. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, so now we know that our servers are running. We can see our cubes. We can access our data content. Everything is available to you to use out of the box, just like you used to with TM1 if you're a legacy TM1 user. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start installing Planning Analytics Workspace and Docker. For that, if you remember our earlier conversation, I mentioned there are two websites that we will be going to. We're already done with the Fix Central because we have downloaded our files, so I'm going to close this one and we'll switch to the next one. Again, another Google search, Planning Analytics Workspace installation, is going to take you to IBM's official website. If you click on this link, you're going to see that there's an overview with a graphic interface, and there are a few things that you need to do. There are a few steps that you need to follow through. Check the prerequisites, install Docker, install Planning Analytics Workspace, and then connect to TM1 and authentication service. Now let's take a look at the prerequisites first. First things first, we are running a Windows 2016 server, so we need to make sure that we have the right file. As you can see here, it states that if you're using the Microsoft Windows Server 2016, you need to have Docker that runs on Microsoft Windows Server 2016, or a VM with Microsoft Windows Server 2016 running under VMware or Microsoft Hyper-V. No hardware virtualization is required for Windows Server 2016. And the naming convention in the installation kit will be very similar to this one here, which will say IPA_workspace_local_win, and there will be a version number .zip file. Main reason why we're installing today on a Windows 2016 server is with Windows 2016 servers, no hardware virtualization is required, but for the rest of the Windows servers, you will need hardware virtualization. Okay, so that's one of the key things that we're looking for. The next thing that we will be looking for is here. We have checked the prerequisites. The next thing to do is installing the Docker. Now, before we start this task, there are a few things that we need to do. We need to make sure that the Windows container service is already installed. Okay. Now, how do we do that? Okay. So we'll open up a Windows PowerShell window. Okay. Within the window, there are a couple things that we can do. One, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install the Windows feature for containers, which is this command here, install-windows feature containers. When I hit enter, what it's going to do is it's going to basically install that feature to our Windows 2016 server. Now once the installation is done, it's going to require a restart of our service, of our server. As you can see here. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording one more time and restart my server and continue the recording afterwards. Okay, Windows feature containers is now installed on my server. Next thing I want to do is make sure that all my Windows services and installations are up to date. So I'm going to go into sconfig. Within sconfig, there's an option in here that you can find, which is download and install updates. It's number 6. Okay. You can search for all updates or the recommended updates only, depending on your preference. We'll select the R for recommended updates. It's going to do a quick search in my Windows 2016 server and find if there are any updates that are necessary for my server to be completed before I move on to the next steps. Okay, it looks like Windows found an update security update for Microsoft Visual C 2008 Service Pack 1 redistributable package. If I want to update it, I can select A and say yes. So it's going to do is download the updates and install the updates. Every updates we do, it's my recommendation to you would be restarting your server. Even though it says restart required is false, I tend to find that as a good practice, especially when you're dealing with Windows updates, just to be on the safe side. Now I can either shut down the server or restart my server. I'm going to select number 13, which is restarting the server, and we'll come back to this page one more time afterwards. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Docker Enterprise Edition for Windows Server 2016 installation. For that, we're going back to our Knowledge Center page that we opened earlier, and you can see that there is a Install Docker Enterprise Edition for Windows Server 2016 option in here. So we'll click on that so that we can find the exact commands that we can use in order to be able to download this. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this. The easy way, if you have the internet connection on your server, is to use the PowerShell scripts, PowerShell commands. If you don't have the internet connection, now that's the optional. There's a script to install Docker EE at the bottom of the page. Then you can just follow these scripts, which is basically copying the zip file to a machine where you want to install Docker and then continuing to do the installation that route. Okay, for me, I have the internet access, so I'm going to be using the commands in here. We will be following these commands to make sure that everything is running for Docker. So I'll start with this one first. Basically, you're copying and going back to your PowerShell script and pasting this command. It's the first one. This is for the Docker provider module to be installed. And so it's telling me that NuGet provider is required to continue. And do you want to PowerShell to install it for you, find it for you? If you hit yes, which is Y, and then go hit enter, it's going to do that for you. So NuGet is now being installed. And after that, what it's going to do is it's going to go and get the Docker provider like it did, and now it's done. Okay. The next thing I'm going to install is this one here, a package for Docker. Okay. And then we'll go back in here, paste it, enter. Okay, now it's going to go ahead and find that package. It's going to install it for us using the PowerShell script. If you're familiar with Linux installations, this is very similar to that. Now you can see that Docker is now installed. Docker version is 17.0.6.2 EE6, which is the Enterprise Edition 6. Source is Docker, and the summary is for Docker for Windows Server 2016. Okay, to test it with the Hello World container, you just copy this section in here, another command, copy, and then we'll come back to our PowerShell script. Okay, copy looks like, say copy here, there we go, and then hit enter. Again, it says unable to find the image Hello World Nano servers locally, so it's downloading it from the Windows or Docker. As you can see here, it's going to continue to do the same things. It's going to do a pull for our containers, and once the pull is complete, it's going to do a quick digest, and then it's going to display a status message from Docker with hello from Docker, basically. So let's wait for that to complete. While that's completing, as you can see down below here, it's going to tell you, some advanced Docker features like Swarm require Windows is updated to include the fixes in KB4053570, later cumulative patches, sconfig. So this is what we have done earlier. We have downloaded the necessary patches that are required. That was only one, so our Windows is up to date, so we don't need to do this one more time. Okay, so now digestion is complete. Hello Docker message is displayed. As you can see here, it's the same message. So we're good to go on this side. Okay, so now that we have installed Docker, now we can go back to our IBM Knowledge Center and continue doing the rest of the steps. Okay, so now Docker is installed. Okay, the next thing that we need to install is the as you can see here, download Docker Compose. So the Docker Compose, we need to go and download it from the GitHub location. Okay, so we'll go in here, click on it. There's the 1.18.0. It looks like it's the latest one. So we're going to go ahead and download that one as well. We'll scroll down all the way in here. Oh, looks like they've changed the locations now. So the downloads are at the top rather than the bottom. Okay, so the Docker Compose Windows version x86 64. We'll download this one. The Docker Compose. So for this one, I'm going to download it again to my D drive for PA downloads. Okay, I'm going to put it in the PA installation folder again. We'll just say save. Okay, now that we have downloaded Docker Compose, what we need to do is place it under our Docker installation. Okay, so our Docker installation is going to be in here. If you have done the default installation, it's going to be under C program files Docker. So I'm going to just go ahead and open that. C, program files, Docker. Okay, so I'm going to place Docker Compose in there too. So all I need to do is open up that first installation folder that we have, which is that D drive that we have opened earlier. Okay. You can see both of them side by side. PA downloads, PA installation. Here's that Docker Compose file that we had. I'll just copy this, paste it over here. And one thing we need to remember to do is to name the Docker Compose accurately, which is to remove this additional -Windows x86 64 section, and just hit enter. Okay. Okay, so we have placed our Docker Compose where it's supposed to be, and then now we can continue to do the rest of the steps. Now we're going to pull the images from Docker Hub, and in order to do that, you need to open a command window and type the following commands. Now it's a good practice also to close your existing PowerShell windows occasionally. That's what I got the habit to do. I'm just going to close it, reopen a new Windows PowerShell window, and then use the same exact commands that are given here, which is to copy the Windows Server Core latest. I'll just paste it over here, and I hit enter. Now you can see that Docker, the term Docker, is not recognized as name of the commandlet. What happened here is it did not notify us, but it actually requires, the Docker requires the server to be restarted. So that's what I'm going to do next, and we'll come back to this one more time. Our server is now restarted. We can continue to do our installation based on the procedures that we have on the Planning Analytics Workspace installation website. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy the Docker pool first for Windows Server Core and paste it in our Windows PowerShell and hit enter. Now Docker core or the Windows Server Core pool is going to take a little bit, so I'm going to pause the recording one more time because this is going to be about a 4 gigs file and a 1.2 gigs file will be downloaded. And once it's complete, I'm going to continue the recording one more time with the mongo pool. All right. Windows Server Core pool is complete. Now we're going to continue with our mongo pool that is necessary for our Planning Analytics Workspace installation. Copy this, paste it over here, enter. Now we'll continue with our mongo pool as well. Okay, now that both pools that are required for Planning Analytics Workspace is complete, I will continue to do another restart of my server. If you remember the first part of our installation, I mentioned that the IP address that is associated with our TM1 servers was a 160 public IP address. Now, with Docker installation, what Docker does is it installs another NIC, another virtual Ethernet address on your machines. With that, our IP addresses change on that our TM1 servers are running on, especially when you're trying to communicate with that TM1 server externally. You might run into some issues if you don't fix that before you move on. Now to fix that, let's take a look at it first and see what the situation is. I'll open up Architect one more time. Within Architect, we'll go to our planning sample server, log in as usual with admin Apple. And then once I log in with admin Apple, now you can see that the network IP address listed here is a virtual number 172.24.96.1. That's not what we want. Okay, so we'll close this one. There are a few commands that you can use. I'm going to show them to you. So the software that I'm going to use here is Notepad++. It's a free open source software that you can find anywhere. Okay, so here are those two calls that you can make. Now, we'll do the first one first, get net IP interface. So this is going to list all the IP interfaces that are within our server. So I'm going to do that, copy that, and paste it over. We'll do a Control-C, Control-V, enter. Okay, so now you can see that there is quite a few interfaces that are defined in here, but there's one here that was added later on, which is this HNS internal NIC that you will be seeing. This is the one that Docker uses, but the one that I want to use for my TM1 servers is here, the public network address. Okay, so each of them has an IF index number associated with them. You can see on the left hand side here. And then each of them also have an interface matrix number that is associated with them. Now, this interface matrix number is the important number because this defines which server takes precedence, or which address takes precedence over the others. So in this case, the Ethernet HNS internal NIC has the lowest interface matrix number, so it takes precedence over the others. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some changes in here. I'm going to change that NIC's address to a larger number so that it doesn't take precedence, and reduce the number for the public network address that I have to a lower number so it takes precedence over the others. So the first one I'm going to do is the NIC, the HNS internal NIC. So its index numbers, interface index number here is 6, so I will use 6 for that, and then the interface matrix number for that is 15, so I'm going to move that actually to 30. Okay, so we'll copy that and then paste it over here. Copy looks like, we'll do it one more time, Control C this time, Control V. Okay, so here we go. Now we'll change that one to 30. Okay, the second one I need to change is my public network, which is sitting at 25. I want to make sure that it takes precedence. I'm going to move that to 15. So that's the interface index number is 9, as you can see here. And then the matrix number for that is going to be now 15. So I'll copy that one with Control C one more time, and then paste it over here with Control V, and then enter. Okay, now if I do the same again, GetNet IP interface, now I can see that the first one is now listed at matrix 30, and then the one that I want actually to use, the system to use, is now listed at 15, so it should take precedence. Now if you look at architect at this point, go back to TM1, and here's the recently added here, architect, and then log in. You'll see that your IP address now has changed. Now it's a good practice to restart your server here, so we'll do that one more time. Okay, now that our system is restarted one more time, we're going to go back to our installation overview. Okay, take a look at our steps. We've done the prerequisites, we've installed Docker, now it's time to install Planning Analytics Workspace. To do that, I'm going to just click on here. There is some information in here that says you need to extract your content to a specific location if you prefer to, if you're using Linux. There's other procedures in here that talks about, but the one that we need to be using is going to be here, which is for Windows 2016 Server. And this is the command that we will be using, start.ps1, which stands for the PowerShell script. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my installation directory for PA. We'll find the workspace files. So we'll say extract these files here to IPA workspace local. Now this is going to be some large files in there, so this might take a little bit for it to complete. My extraction is complete. It's created, the new file has been created named IPA, or new folder has been created named IPA_workspace local win, and then the number for the release is 2.0.28 127.2, which is the kit number that was used for this release. So if you double click on it, you're going to see that there's quite a few files in there that you will be able to use. Now if you follow the script, it tells you to go into a PowerShell terminal window one more time and then start the installation through that. So we'll continue to do that. Windows PowerShell. I have installed it on the D drive, so we'll switch to D, and from D drive within the folder directory, I'm going to do a cd tab so I can find where I have my files, which is PA downloads, and then we'll do another tab in here, which is under PA installation we have done, and another tab in there will be IPA workspace local Windows, where we have installed the files or extracted our files. So at this point I'm ready to either we can do a directory so we can see all the contents of the directory, or we can just say copy this command here and then paste it over here. I'm sorry. Of course, we're using the Windows Server 2016. We'll copy the PS1, so we'll copy this one, and then we'll paste it over here, and then hit enter. With that, our Planning Analytics Workspace installation is going to begin. Now, this will take a little bit to extract all of these files, so I'm going to pause the recording one more time, and I'll get back to you when the installation completes. Our next step is to start the administration tool. If this is your first time running Planning Analytics Workspace, you need to start the administration tool by running with default key, which is Y for yes. It's going to start the Planning Analytics Workspace administration tool running on port 8888. So once this completes, it's going to open up a new browser window, and it's going to display the administration tool. Okay, so as you can see, the administration tool is open. With that, I have two licenses that I need to accept. The first one is the IBM license, so read through the information listed in here and select accept. And then the second one is the non-IBM license for any of the products out there that is included within the solution itself, and then you also have to accept that one as well. Once you do that, now the administration menu opens. Now, for you to be able to use the administration menu, a couple things you need to know. One of them is the port number that is used in your planning sample. Now, to find it, you can go to your installation directory for TM1, which is going to be program files, IBM, Cognos, TM164, and if you look under your samples directory, you will find your TM1 servers in there. These are all the sample servers that you can utilize, and the ones that are installed are also in here as well. Planning sample is the one that we will be using, so I'll open that one up. And then the file that you're looking for is the Confi configuration file, tm1s.config, and you can open that with any of your text editors. What we're looking for here is two lines. One of them is our SSL mode, making sure that if it's using either true or false. If it's not set to true, or if it's set to true, it's going to be using HTTPS. If it's not set to true, it will be using HTTP protocol. So those are the main differentiators. The second thing that we're looking for is the HTTP port number. We'll search for that one, HTTP port number. So misspelled. Okay, so this port number is utilized for Planning Analytics Workspace to be able to do the communication for authentication purposes to the TM1 server. So we use at least one TM1 server for you to be able to do the authentication first, so that all the rest of the servers are basically authenticated afterwards using that same server. The other thing to keep in mind in here is 5895, 5898 also ports are also has to be known for you to know which one to use. Again, if you look at that, use SSLT. If it's HTTPS, then you will be using the 5898. If it's HTTP, then you will be using 5895. Okay, now that we know our port number, we can go back to our administration tool. Now, within the administration tool, depending on your authentication mode, there are two options. Either you can do TM1 or CAM authentication mode. Now, the CAM authentication mode has a few additional parameters that you need to add, such as the BI gateway URI, dispatcher URI, and the namespace ID. But since we're not going to be doing that today, we're going to be using the TM1 authentication mode, which will give us three options. TM1 admin server URI, TM1 application server gateway URI, and the TM1 server host address. Now, so the IP address that we need to use is the same IP address that we have used for our TM1 servers. Easy way to find it one more time, if you open up Architect in here, within Architect, if you log into your planning sample, for instance, then you, on the right hand side, you will be seeing the IP address that is utilized on your server. So it's 169.45.106.55. So I'm going to go in and use the same IP, 169.45.106.55. 45.106 and 55. Now I'm using the 858.98 here. I'm going to, for the TM1 server gateway URI, I'm going to be using the same IP address. I'm going to just copy this over, Control C, and then I'm going to just go ahead and select this section here and just paste it over. Make sure you have your colons and then your HTTPS address is spelled out accurately. I'm going to do one more here, copy paste, Control C, and then we'll do a Control V here. And then the number to use for the port, like I mentioned earlier, is the one that we have used for our planning sample. Within our planning sample, it's that HTTP port number we were talking about. It's 12354. We're going to go ahead and validate this. Let's see if everything is accurate. Now, as you can see, there's an error in here. And if you look on the left hand side, you will see why the error is caused. I have missed one of the slashes here. Okay, we'll go ahead and do validate one more time, and everything checks out okay. Okay, now that we have okayed everything, everything is validated. If you look on the status tab, there's nothing running right now. If I hit update, what it's going to do is it's going to pop up a window. Now, update configuration window is now open, but what it's doing is it's basically starting all my services to be used by Planning Analytics Workspace, all the containers that are for Planning Analytics Workspace. Now you're going to see that there's going to be a second pop-up window opening up in a short duration. And that pop-up window basically is going to refresh the status page here at the top. Here's my second window, just appeared, refreshing service status. Once the services are updated and started with the settings that we have applied, then this window is going to close by itself, and then we can check our status page afterwards. Okay, second pop-up is gone now. We can hit OK and then go check our status page. As you can see, all our services for Planning Analytics Workspace is now installed and they're starting. One way to make sure that your services are started completely is to check your CPU percent. If I sort it by CPU percent, as you can see on the right hand side, there's some services that are still starting. Just like a Windows service, a container is also a service that is running inside a Docker environment. So before they start, you cannot access your Planning Analytics Workspace environment. So keep that in mind. So this is still continuing to update, so I'm going to just hit refresh to see if they're still updating or they're up and running. You're going to see that the CPU percentages here are going to change based on every started service. It's now communicating back with the Docker services from our main UI, administration tool UI. Now it's updating. As you can see, now CPU percentages are down to 13% for the initialization. The rest of them are done. Around 3% or so of CPU usage is what you will be seeing in most cases. Once the initialization is done, there's going to be another completed notification here. So that's what we're waiting for. So we'll hit one more refresh. The initialization, let's see if it's completed this time. Of course, the other way you can do this is, if you don't want to look into the administration menu, you can also run Windows PowerShell commands. For instance, if you run a PowerShell command here, such as this one, docker ps-a, that's going to give you which services are running, which services are coming back to life. Having a larger screen makes it easier for you to see. So you can see which services have been up for how long and which ports they're using, and all that critical information that you need to maintain or to administer your Planning Analytics Workspace services are already in these commands as well. Okay, we can refresh one more time, but I'm assuming that the services are now done. If I scroll down, I can see that the first two are already completed, the initialization. So if I go to here and look for my server, if I search for the IP address that we were using earlier, let's see if it's still in my control. Yep. And then hit enter. Now you're going to see that as soon as I typed in the IP address, the Planning Analytics Workspace main UI greeted me. Now I can log in through here, admin Apple. So log in. Wrong password, let's try again. Okay, if you type your password, it helps, of course. So here's the first user that I logged in as, my admin user, and then the admin user or the first user that, keep in mind, the first user that logs into Planning Analytics Workspace becomes the administrator. So whichever user that you have picked to log in will be the administrator, who can define some of these user roles that are in Planning Analytics Workspace. But since I logged in with the admin user itself, then the admin user becomes the administrator of the content for Workspace. Now you can start looking into your workspace environments. You can see your servers on the left hand side in the navigation pane, and then you can look at your content basically by selecting your cubes, your dimensions, your processes will be your choices. And then if you like to look at, for instance, any of the views that you have predefined, you can take a look at them through here. Here are some sample views that were already in the solution itself. And if I just add this view, we can see that there's data that is associated with the view, and you can start using Planning Analytics Workspace right away. Making sure that your all your components are working accurate. You can also check and see if you have your visualizations are functioning as they're supposed to by doing some adding some quick graphics and charts to your workspace canvas. Okay, so this is the workspace installation. So that's just how you do the workspace installation. Now, our next step is going to be installing Planning Analytics for Excel. That's the Excel component for Workspace. To do that, I'm going to need the files that are associated with it. So we're going to open up that installation directory one more time, and we'll find the WinX64 installation file for Planning Analytics for Excel, which is here. This is the core Win684 2029.10 mltar.gz file. It's a mouthful. So we'll extract this file. It creates another file that you need to basically extract one more time. There's the tar file. So we'll open that one up, and then we'll say extract to here. Okay. So now that I have extracted all of my files that are required in the folder directories, all I need to do is open up that WinX64H directory or the folder, and then do a right click. If you prefer to run as administrator, or just if you're an admin already, you can open it. You can just or double click on it. It's going to ask me again where I want to install it. There's an agreement, license agreement that you need to accept. Make sure to, for me, again, D drive is the drive that has more space. I'm going to install it in there. You can choose whichever drive you would like to install it to. The usual questions, and all it installs is should be about 18 files, yes, total. And those files, once they're installed, what you can do is you can just go into your Excel, open it up, within Excel, you're going to see a new tab on top of your Excel ribbon, another ribbon called IBM Planning Analytics. The first time you use, it's going to require you to set up your connection. So the connection that we need to set up is back to the Planning Analytics Workspace server. If you're wondering where it's residing, basically it's this IP address again. So you need to just you can copy that IP address and then paste it over here. HTTP 169.45.106.55. For the name, we're going to call it Planning Analytics Workspace Excel. You can test your connection here. Connection succeeded, server is online, save it. Okay, at this point, you can see your servers inside Planning Analytics for Excel as well. Now we're going to go ahead and log into Planning Sample. As you see, the login page is the same page that you were seeing earlier. Admin, poll, login. Now, as this is our first initial login to Excel, it's saying Microsoft Excel must be restarted to complete the registration in order to use custom reports. We say OK here. I mean, you can still continue to use it except for the custom reports, but if you want to use the custom reports as well, you just close Excel, open it one more time after you set up your connection. Okay, and then open up Planning Analytics, connect, Planning Analytics Workspace for Excel, Planning Sample, then poll. Okay. Now that question won't pop up again because it's already registered. Now we can open up any of those views that we were looking at earlier and then start working with our data using Excel add this time. Okay, now you're going to see a couple familiar UIs in here because Planning Analytics for Excel uses shared components from Planning Analytics Workspace, such as the viewer here that you will be seeing is a shared component between Workspace and Excel, so you can see the same UI between two solutions, but it's only installed in Planning Analytics Workspace. As a result, you need to install Planning Analytics Workspace to be able to use with your Excel add-in on your Planning Analytics server. And this is pretty much it. Today I've covered the installation of Planning Analytics Excel for Excel, Planning Analytics Workspace, as well as the Planning Analytics TM1 Server. So thank you for watching and keep us posted if you have any comments.